Well, hello. In this session, what I want to talk about is the risk environment. Now, some of you may have seen Donald Rumsfeld's quote, "There are known knowns. There are things that we know that we know. There are known unknowns. There are things that we know that we do not know. And then there's unknown unknowns. There are things that we do not know that we do not know." Now, that's been lampooned on comedy shows right throughout the world. But the reality is, it is actually quite insightful in terms of the risk environment within an organisation. So what we do have in our risk environment are things that are within inside of our control and things that are outside of our control. Now, if you look at the things outside of our control, there are things that we either do not or cannot foresee as a possibility. And they're the things that take us completely by surprise. Now, an organisation that's tuned to its environment, they will identify more of those things, and they're going to have less surprises. They're the culture that, as I've talked about in another blog, rather than saying this will never happen, they ask the question, what happens if? Then we also have those things that are outside of our control that we do foresee, and we're talking things like exchange rate variations, differences in or changes to legislation, all of those things. We can foresee those as a possibility, but we can't do anything to reduce the likelihood of those things happening. So on the side where we have no control, we don't have the ability to change the likelihood of those events. What we want to be focusing on is the consequences and reducing the consequences should they happen. Now, on the other side, we've got the things that we can control. And if we look at it as a quadrant, we've got up on the top right, we've got a quadrant that says those things that we do not or cannot foresee as a possibility in terms of the things that we can control. And then down below, we've got the ones that we do foresee or that we do identify and that we do deal with. Now, the problem is, if you're an organisation sitting in that area where you do not identify those things that can go wrong and you don't do anything about them, you're going to be characterised by constant crisis management. You're going to be characterised by inability to meet your objectives. You're going to have stakeholder dissatisfaction. You're going to have staff dissatisfaction. So you really need to be focusing on going from that top right where it's that you don't understand your environment, you don't understand the things that could go wrong, and bring it down to that bottom right. Now, how do you do that? Well, the first and foremost, understand what you do. Because in an earlier blog, I've talked about identifying risk and saying, what do we do? What can go wrong? So, of course, you need to understand what it is that you do within your organisation. And to be able to do that, you need a sound strategy. You also need to have a sound risk management framework, as well as, and I guess most importantly, a learning organisation. You need to be able to do post-event analysis, as I've talked about previously. So we have this risk environment. So you've got those known knowns, those known unknowns, or unknown knowns, and the unknown unknowns. Now, just as a final thing, one of the things that I've started to see in bureaucracies is the unknown known. And the unknown known is those things where the people at the top of the organisation don't understand what is happening below the organisation. So there are things that could go wrong down here or have gone wrong, but they're not reported up. And that will be a subject of another blog. So that's all for this session. And as always, let's be careful out there.